The Bearcats didn't need much to beat the Knights on Saturday.
You are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bearcats. My name is Jeff Carr, and I'm on Cincinnati all the time. I have worked in multiple university athletic departments in the media relations area, and I've been a season ticket holder for the Bearcats football team for now 7 seasons. I'm glad that you're alongside me here today because Locked On Bearcats is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Bearcats, every single day. And on today's podcast, we're going to recap this win that the Bearcats just got over UCF. Kind of felt like it was a bit of a vanilla game plan that got the win, but sometimes that's all right. I think we might be getting complacent as Bearcats fans, and that's kind of fun. We'll get into that here in just a moment. In a few minutes, we'll talk about the fact that, we don't talk about them enough, but the special teams just really, really showed out in this game. And then later on, we're going to have some fun and talk about why the Bearcats did not cover the 10.5 point spread that they had on FanDuel. And yeah, I got some theories. We'll get into that here in a little bit. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Bearcats podcast that is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today. And where we'll get started is just this win that the Bearcats were able to build off of a very what seemed like a pretty basic game plan on both sides of the ball, whether it was offense or defense. It just kind of felt very normal, very fine, very okay. Didn't seem like there was a lot to it. On the offense, they came up with enough explosive plays that UCF was just incapable of making because they were playing their third string quarterback. But there was a huge gap in quarterback play in this game, possibly the biggest gap that Brendan Sorsby has ever seen in his career, because he wasn't great, but he was fine in this game. He made a couple of very important throws, one to Jeff Caldwell for 40-yard touchdown that was fantastic. If you watch the play, UCF sends a blitz, and there's a free runner that nobody touches on the offensive line. It's right in Brendan Sorsby's face, and he's able to uncork a deep ball to Jeff Caldwell that perfectly lands in his breadbasket, and he walks into the end zone scot-free because he got behind the coverage. UCF just lost him. I don't know if they thought somebody was back deep and nobody was back deep, but when you watch the replay, Jeff Caldwell's so open, and the fact that Brendan Sorsby's able to stand in the pocket, he kind of took a hit. He kind of glanced, after he made the throw, but it was just a fantastic play. I was happy to see that. There were some other plays that weren't so fantastic. There were some incomplete passes where just didn't quite look like Brendan Sorsby had his best stuff today. And there were a couple of plays in particular there in the fourth quarter where the Bearcats were on the 2-yard line and he tried to hand the ball off to Tawee Walker and he fumbled it and he fell on it. So nothing bad happened there, but it was kind of one of them things like, all right, I think they were just okay with the field goal there. So that's interesting. But overall, this just felt like a game where they were going to establish the run come hell or high water, and they never did. They never really got the run going in this game. You got to give credit to UCF where credit's due. Their defensive line really played havoc with this Bearcats offensive line. I do not expect the Bearcats offensive line to get their 4th Big 12 offensive line of the week award after that performance, but overall, it was fine. It was a fine day for the offense. And then on defense, there were a lot of folks that were belly aching around me, and I kind of agreed with them a little bit, where UCF is playing this third-string quarterback, Cam Fancher, doesn't play a whole lot, actually from Dayton, Ohio, so it's kind of funny. He's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder here coming back and playing the Bearcats, but it was clear very early on, if he wasn't running, he wasn't hurting the Bearcats defense. And so what they did was they just sat back in their soft zone. There was barely any blitzes that I remember. There was a blitz that they got a sack in the fourth quarter that it felt like, wow, where was that? Where was that all game? And there was a nice play that that McCray had made. But other than that, there was not a whole lot of blitzing going on. They rushed 3, they dropped back 8, and they called it a day. And there were a couple of plays where it felt like the ball could have found a receiver, but Cam Fancher was just incapable of making the throw. But all in all, like, it just seemed as though UC had this advantage that UCF could do nothing about. I want to take your attention for a moment to the time of possession. Central Florida had the ball for 28 minutes. Sorry. Was it 28 minutes? It was a lot. They had the ball for a ridiculous amount of time. Sorry, 39 minutes. It was 28 minutes in the third quarter. 39 total minutes of possession in this game. I don't know if you know this or not. There are 60 minutes in a football game. 60 minutes of game time. And when you look at how it's broken down, they had over 10 minutes in the first quarter. They had over 11 minutes in both the third quarter and in the fourth quarter. The only quarter that they did not have double-digit minutes of possession was in the second quarter. The Bearcats barely touched the ball in this. The Knights doubled the Bearcats in total plays. And yet it never felt like, and maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments section, it never felt like this game was in doubt. Like the Bearcats went up 7-0, and I'm like, all right, you add a few more, and it kind of feels like we're done here. And at one point it was up 17-0, and you're like, yeah, this feels about right. It's odd because I kind of felt like there would be more scoring from the UCF side, but after watching what they were putting together, it wasn't happening. Because when they did try to run the ball with their running backs, Bearcats shut them down. They couldn't run the ball. There was a lot of this whole like pass play setup that they had for their third string quarterback in Cam Fancher, where he took the snap, he made a read, and if the read wasn't open, he tucked it and ran. And there were a few occasions, the Bearcats didn't do this a lot, but if they put a spy on the quarterback, there were a few occasions where he would tuck it to run, see he couldn't run, and so he'd check down to a running back or a tight end that was hanging out on the side and got like 2 or 3 yards. Cam Fancher completed 28 passes. He attempted 49 passes. He had an average yard per attempt of 4.5. They were moving the ball. I mean, they outgained the Bearcats on the day, partially because they doubled them in total plays and about doubled them in time of possession as well. But they did the thing that Russ and myself talked about a lot on Thursday's podcast, and that was the fact that they can move the ball from the 20 to the 20 almost at will. But once they got near the red zone, they had nothing. They couldn't do anything. And even that, they didn't necessarily get it to the 20. It kind of felt like getting around about the 40-yard line, the Bearcats really started to clamp down a little bit, and they couldn't quite run the right routes, UCF, and they couldn't quite make the right plays to get themselves into an easy field goal range. Because when they did, their field goal kicker just nailed it. I mean, there was no chance if they were in field goal range all day that their field goal kicker was going to be sitting on the sideline. They had the ability to make plenty of field goals if that were the case. It's just the fact that the Bearcats were able to hit these explosive plays on offense and put so much pressure on the Knights to do anything at all with their third string quarterback, which he was incapable of doing. And I get it. Like, any given Saturday and get a guy out on a field, see what he's got. It's pretty clear that the Bearcats had a good game plan for him, albeit one that I would have liked to have seen more aggressiveness from, but how can I complain? They won. And that's the funny thing about this, right? Like, I think as Bearcats fans, we're getting complacent because as I was leaving Nippert Stadium, I heard a lot of people just like, oh, man, I don't know about that win. I don't know about that game, man. I think I'm still out on Scott Satterfield, man. Like, I was hearing that. I was hearing people say they don't know about the coach. Like, I don't know if you know this. They just got to win. Of course, they're 5-1. The season still has plenty of games left, and they're not bowl eligible yet. They're not in they're in contention for the Big 12 championship, but they still have to win a couple of more games to really be taken seriously for that by other folks around the country. But all that being said, like, I am in on what Scott Satterfield is doing right now. And I understand the vanilla nature of the game plan, because when you can win with a vanilla game plan, you kind of got to go for it and not go crazy and install all this and that and have to have these crazy gadget plays and all this. Sometimes you just go out and you just beat the other guy, call it a day, move on. They kind of got that next week with Oklahoma State, which we'll talk about a lot this week. But that was kind of how I saw that a vanilla game plan that got the win. But I'll tell you this, there was an impressive part of the Bearcats win that we don't talk about enough, because special teams, they were really special on Saturday. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. From over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical parts and items from the most trusted brands in the business, they're all at supplyhouse.com. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. The part finder tools and 3D schematics are a game changer and can save you hours where every detail matters. Plus, their trade master perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make the whole process that much smoother. You need to join the Trade Master program today and score some serious perks like that priority shipping, low prices, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And you can head on over to FanDuel right now and still take advantage of this awesome early football season offer for new users, because if you place your first $5 wager and it wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. And looking ahead, probably not something you want to put your first $5 wager on, but looking ahead to some futures and where the Bearcats are in the odds to win the Big 12. They haven't quite moved that much. Texas Tech is favored. They're currently at minus 130. Then Utah is right behind them at plus 850. Then the Bearcats at 9-1. Right behind the Bearcats are BYU at 12-1. In fact, Arizona State was ahead of UC, but they've fallen down now to 5th and 13-1. That's all over at FanDuel. Again, new users can place a $5 wager, and if it wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. Download that FanDuel app today. Thank you for making Locked On Bearcats part of your day. If you aren't already doing so, I invite you to make it part of your everyday routine by hitting that subscribe button right here on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. We're on all of them out there. Make sure you check us out here today. And thanks for making us your first listen whenever you do. Always appreciate those who join in on the show. Love talking Bearcats with you. Football and, of course, basketball is getting started here very soon. Be excited to jump into that. All right, with this win, 20-11, UC beats UCF. And I felt like it was very vanilla on offense and defense. And so the difference came in special teams. And if you look at this, there were more punts in this game from UC than you would have liked. But honestly, I mean, how many more Fletcher brothers can we get out there? Can we just sign all the Fletcher brothers to come in? Is there any more? Like, we need more Fletcher brothers to come and punt for the Bearcats, because quite frankly, they're all amazing. They're all fantastic. And Max Fletcher is no exception. He had a heck of a day because he had his average net punt was like 40 yards. He was absolutely drilling them, knocking UCF back as far as, average start of possession goes. But really it was the fact that, I mean, if you look at this, the Knights actually attempted to punt returns. Everything else was fair caught because of such great punt coverage. That's the other part of this, is that Max Fletcher had a day, but the punt coverage team was just all over the Knights. There were 2 attempted punt returns, and they had 2 total yards from both punt returns. 1 yard each time. Just absolutely got nailed both times. First time, the guy should have had a fair catch, and he got destroyed by Manny Covey. And then on the second attempted return, you had a great, it was a pair of guys, and I was trying to look back and see, okay, Xavier Williams and Sabor both got down and were able to bring him down almost immediately. The Knights punt returner, he just had a bad day. I mean, if it wasn't a fair catch, he was getting hit right away. They did such an amazing job with the field position, and even late in the ball game where it seemed like the Bearcats just couldn't hold on to the ball. They couldn't run down the clock. And all right, they got to punt again. They're able to pin the Knights back on their own 2-yard line with a beautiful punt. Albeit, I think that, Max Fletcher kicked it from the plus side of the 50. So you don't love that. You don't love that they're punting from the plus side of the 50, but that's what this game was calling for, was just that field position, because no matter how many yards it felt like UCF got, they weren't scoring. Now, there was the one time, and we'll get into that here in a minute, but I digress. The whole point of this was it was set up super well by special teams. And, of course, Stephen Rusnak was really good at pinning them deep on kickoffs. There was one kickoff return that the guy did not fair catch, did not kneel down, didn't do the whole thing where you kneel down and you move it to the 25. He catches it, he tries to return it, and he gets drilled at the 10-yard line because he caught it on the goal line. Drilled at the 10-yard line. And it was hilarious because targeting was not called on that play, but they reviewed it for possible targeting because he was hit so hard. It was just such a good tackle, good form tackle that absolutely rocked that kick returner for the Knights. But UC's special teams is looking really good, and we don't talk about them enough, to the point that, obviously you're not going to go super crazy over punts. But man, Max Fletcher can just get it. And that punt coverage team, he's so good at getting just enough hang time to where he's getting plenty of distance, and he's putting the opposing team in such tough field position to start with. But guys are getting down. They are beating their blockers, and they are getting down to the point of where the ball is very quickly, so that you don't see those game-changing special team plays. I mean, we can remember just a few years ago when it did feel like that was happening. I mean, you had some great punts, but you didn't have great punt coverage. And then on kickoff returns, and there were open availability for the opponent to really make a difference on special teams, and they can't anymore. The Bearcats are shutting them down in that area. And we don't talk about it enough, but it is important to what they have and where they want to go. Think about how different that Iowa State game would have been had they had a competent kicker. They would have been able to kick some field goals and at least make it a little bit closer than it ended up being. I mean, they ultimately a one-score game, but at the same time, like, there were some times where they had to go for it on fourth down, period. And we can remember not that distant past here for this Bearcats team where they couldn't kick a field goal, period. Stephen Rusnak's changed all that. I mean, Duke can nail an important field goal when you need him to. And I felt that it was necessary. I mean, looking at how this game went, the way that they were able to pin UCF deep, making sure that their punt return unit could not change the game, and then on the other side of the ball, when they needed a kick, they had it. I mean, there is, I think, the highest praise that you can give any team's special teams unit is that there are no complaints. I have no complaints about Bearcats special teams. They looked phenomenal on Saturday, and they were a phenomenal part. Honestly, if I had to rate it, they were the most consistent part of the game. Because sure, offense made some key plays and key moments to get them the win. Defense made some key stops whenever UCF was driving, but it still felt like they had so far to go, and defense just clamped down on them. That was good, but at times they looked a little rusty. They looked a little lethargic. Special teams never looked that way. Special teams were a consistent part of this Bearcats 20-11 win over the Knights. But there was something else to this game. There was something that kept UC from covering the 10.5-point spread. And I find it hilarious for all the wrong reasons. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can even make your daily drives feel anything but, because they've got smooth handling and intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard on every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly known as OpenPhone. It's the same great business phone system that you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or on your computer. No need to carry two phones or relying on a landline anymore. I love how Quo, formerly known as OpenPhone, really streamlines communication through your team, because everybody can collaborate on calls and texts through the app like a shared inbox. So no customer gets left hanging. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly known as OpenPhone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months over at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. I encourage you to keep the conversation going with me after the show is over. You can follow me on Twitter or on TikTok at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can also follow the show on Twitter at LO_Bearcats, or on TikTok at Locked On Bearcats. Also over on Instagram, all one word as well, Locked On Bearcats. And you can follow me, just flip my username from the other two. It's CARRJEFFF. All right, so yeah, I try not to do this a lot, and if you know me from my other show, I host Locked On Reds. I talk about Cincinnati Reds baseball all year, and I really try my darndest to not get into the nitty-gritty when it comes to officiating, because it's a hard thing to do in any sport. You're not going to be perfect, but there are some calls, man. And the defensive pass interference that led to UCF's only touchdown of the game was just so egregiously bad. And I said it last week against Iowa State, whenever that defensive pass interference led to Iowa State getting a touchdown on the next play. I was like, I've never seen a pass interference call that bad. And that was on the interception. This time there wasn't an interception. It was just a bad throw the defender knocked down. And because a wide receiver for UCF fell in the general vicinity, and I say that as if it wasn't that close. It was close, but he wasn't touched. The UCF guy falls untouched to the turf. Flag goes out. Refs come together. They converge and they discuss, and they still come away and decide that it was pass interference. What are we doing? And the Big 12 officiating crews that we have seen on Bearcats games have been laughably bad, to the point that, like, I get nervous after a big play where it's like, okay, make sure there's no flags, no flag. Okay, now we can celebrate. We're good. There's no flags on the field. Because you just don't know. There are some calls, and I'm not going to complain that much about the pass interference, I believe was on Matthew McDoom over on the sidelines for the guy that came down and caught the ball out of bounds or whatever. I'm not going to complain too much about pass interference on that, because that was a pretty physical play. But at the same time, dude caught the ball, came down with 2 feet out of bounds. No part of him touched the inbounds territory. And for some reason, the referees needed to review that to know that it wasn't a catch. The Bearcats were favored by 10.5, and I didn't see exactly what it was right before kickoff, but I knew the morning of the game it was 10.5. That's what the Bearcats were laying. They won by 9. Take with that what you will. I just find it strange because if you watch this game at all, you saw UCF be able to make a play that goes 3 or 4 yards, 4 or 5 yards. Maybe the quarterback's going to scramble and get like 10 yards with a lot of open field, but that's around the midfield territory, not when you get closer into the red area. When you get into the red zone, they seem like they had no clue what to do. And when they got near the red zone, because they weren't always in the red zone, but when they got near the red zone, the Bearcats were really able to put the clamps down on them. The bend but don't break aspect of the Bearcats defense did its job by not breaking. So because of this penalty, they get to score. And I also buried the lead, too. The penalty happens on 4th down. So the drive is over. But no, it's not. I just find it so strange because there was a little bit of, oh, well, Iowa State, they're a charter member, and there were some interesting calls in the Kansas game, but nothing as egregious as some of the calls in the Iowa State game. And so they're like, well, they're a charter member of the Big 12. And so you're like, okay, I guess there's a little bit of preserving the history of the conference as UC is just blowing through these teams. But at the same time, UCF, yeah, they showed up the same time UC did. So what are we doing here? Are they just that bad at their job? You can answer that one. I think it's ridiculous that you see plays like the Bearcats have been victims of, where penalties are called and you just can't point to who exactly did it. They will say it, and then you watch it and you're like, that guy didn't do that. Nobody did that. Nobody made that penalty. And yet for some reason, the Bearcats had 8 penalties called on them for 80 yards. UCF had 10 penalties called on them for 75 yards. Good news is the Bearcats are 3-0 in conference play, and they head to Oklahoma State next week. We're going to be breaking down that matchup a lot. Definitely going to have Chad Brundlin to break down this win and look ahead to Oklahoma State. There's an opportunity there, and I still feel a little adversarial. That's not the right word. I still feel a little worried to really say that the Bearcats should be favored by a lot, but they should be favored by a lot. Going into Oklahoma State just got their doors blown off by Houston. And they don't look like they have a plan for the rest of the year. Maybe figure out who's going to be a difference maker for them in the coming years, but that might be their only plan. So how do the Bearcats match up? How can they take advantage of those things? We're definitely going to be breaking that down all week here. Chad Brenda will be with us to discuss that on Tuesday. And then we will also have more from Russ Heltman later on in the week, trying to get some other guests on as well to really break some things down with me because there's so much going on with this Bearcats football team. And we're getting closer as well to the preseason opener for some Bearcats basketball, do a preseason opener, the exhibition game. And then we'll get into the season as well. I know that they have the Bearcat basketball dinner coming up this week, which I think you can find tickets for that on gobearcats.com. Don't have the link handy for that one, but it sounds like that'll be a lot of fun. A lot of good times coming up for Bearcats athletics. We're going to be with you every step of the way right here on Locked On Bearcats. So make sure that you subscribe. That way you've got all the content that I've got coming for you right here on YouTube and on your favorite podcasting app. Also, make sure you leave a comment, leave a like. Helps out the algorithm, helps folks find us easier here on YouTube. But that'll do it for us here today. Make sure you check us out on our next coming podcast because we're going to be with you every day because we're Locked On Bearcats every single day.